Recently on social media, Pastor Howard John Wesley, pastors Alpha Street Baptist Church, gave a very transparent, vulnerable message called Selah. Selah is a word or term used in the Psalms where David uses this word. It means intermission, it means rest. And I appreciate his vulnerability and transparency as a pastor, and just saying that he felt tired, weary in ministry, and felt like you can't give out of an empty cup. And he also just said he's taking a sabbatical, that if you can't take a break from it or rest from it, you're a slave to it. I so appreciated his transparency and vulnerability as a man and then as a Christian leader. And I can identify with Pastor Howard John Wesley's message because I've been that guy myself, very, very driven in what I call front stage, backstage. Oftentimes in life, we are affirmed, we are validated, we're given a lot of attention on the front stage because of our performance. We communicated well, or we wrote a nice piece, or we sang a song, we achieved something, or our appearance. And there's a lot of attention and recognition that goes to the front stage. The front stage of your life and my life, that's the public side of who you are and who I am. But then there's the backstage of your life. And that's what Pastor Howard John Wesley was speaking about. The backstage is your truest self. It's your most authentic self. It's what the Bible calls your heart. The heart is the internal headquarters. It's Times Square. It's the place. And the Bible uses heart and soul interchangeably. And what I discovered in my own life is a term that I've coined called soul abuse. Soul abuse is a repeated violence of the deepest part of who I am. It's the repeated violence of the deepest part of who you are. Soul abuse. And so here's what I want to encourage us. As listening to Pastor Howard John Wesley's message, I want to encourage us to be much more intentional about our backstage. We don't get sloppy with the front stage. Achievement, ministry, fruitfulness matters. Growth matters on our front stage. We have to show up there. We have to communicate. We have to teach. We have to speak. We have to sing. And so the front stage of ministry matters. Fruitfulness, evangelism, conferences. But what I want to encourage is this. The front stage matters, the backstage matters even more. So here are some practices that I want to encourage as it relates to our backstage. Think of the acrostic large. The L in large is love. Because if my backstage is not, if I don't know my identity as a beloved son, or if you're a woman as a beloved daughter, then I'm showing up to the front stage for love, not from love. And that was my story. My story on the backstage smeared, marinating in shame and false identity in my backstage. And if your backstage is covered in shame, the thought that you're not enough, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you don't communicate well enough, you're not a good enough preacher. I can remember many times communicating or teaching or preaching, longing for the validation. Less concerned about what the Spirit did, but how did Johnny Parker do? So the shame or the identity that I didn't know for a long time, my identity as a beloved son. My identity was in my performance on the front stage, the achievement, the activity, the busyness that, like Howard John Wesley, I identify. The more busy or the busier I became, the more significant I thought of my life. The more that the phone would ring or invitation to come and speak and do something, that I was significant. So the difference today is this. Knowing your identity as a beloved son and daughter, affirming that every day, that you're a beloved son and daughter, meditating on that you are a beloved son and daughter. And the difference is showing up from love and not for love. The A is abiding. The A in large, abiding, that simply means hanging out, dwelling in the place where your heart becomes the place where Christ lives. Abiding. Abiding simply means also moment by moment surrender. Abide in Jesus, Jesus in you, and you bear much fruit on the front stage, is what John 15 says. The aura in large is rest. That every day you live from rest. And it's not an 8 hours of sleep, it's soul rest. It's what David says in Psalm 62:5, my soul finds its rest in you alone, O Lord. It's something simply as this is breathing. Genesis 2:7, that God formed the man from the dust of the earth, and he breathed into the man's nostrils, and the man became a living being. Notice the sequence. He becomes, as a man or woman, we become what was breathed into us. The breath of God breathed into you. And it's not to verse 14 and 15 of Genesis 2 that God gives us a task to do. So here's a simple way to practice an exercise that I do. I want to encourage you to do. Breathing. Close your eyes and simply breathe. And simply breathe. And in between each breath, meditate on God's word. My soul finds its rest in you alone, O Lord. And breathe. Be still and know that I am God. And breathe. You satisfy my heart, O Lord, with your unfailing love, giving me joy and causing me to sing with gladness. And breathe. I encourage you to simply do this exercise each day and watch the calmness and the settledness that happens around your soul. That's the R. L, love. A, abide. R, rest. The G is glory. Glory in the Hebrew is kabod, and it has the idea of the weightiness of God. That understanding that you and I have been made for glory. We sing a song in our church. To worship you I live. To worship you I live. I live to worship you. I live for your glory. And you and I have been created and designed to bring him glory in our bodies, in our emotions, in our relationships, with our finances, and with our mindset. We're created to bring him glory. And then the E in large is excellence. Excellence of heart, to sustain excellence of habit when I go to the front stage. Because now when I go to the front stage, understanding that I'm loved and I abide and I find my rest in him and I'm made for glory and I have excellent heart, it affects my habits. I'm able to go to the front stage and I'm able to show up from love, abiding, and rest and glory, and not for love, and not for rest, and not for glory. You see how that works? And we all need a place. You see where I am. We all need a place where our souls can catch its breath and be still and know that he's God. So I want to encourage you. Be intentional about what happens in your backstage as a leader, as a follower of Christ, as a beloved daughter and son. God is writing a story. He writes it from the backstage forward. And if you and I are not clear about our backstage story, life and others will write one for us. And you and I don't drift to a great backstage story. It happens intentionally as we surrender our agenda to Jesus as the lover of our soul every day. So life is hard work. Life is heart work. Life is worth the work. And with Christ, you can do the work.